greatest death metal band that ever existed. They are one of the single greatest extreme metal bands that ever existed. They're the first death metal band. They're the best death metal band. They're the most important and influential death metal band. And today we are going to be ranking their entire studio catalog. Welcome back to Big Riff Energy. It is episode 108. Today's Tuesday, May 20th. And this is a long time coming, man. Chuck Schuldiner is one of my favorite and just objectively one of the most important musicians and songwriters that metal has ever seen. He's a huge influence on me and so many others. His songwriting and his forward-mindedness influenced not only extreme metal, but all other kinds of metal as well. I would argue that he might be the single most important figure in metal since Black Sabbath. And it's been a long time coming, ranking this catalog. They just finally reissued Symbolic on vinyl again. I grabbed it, so I now own every album on vinyl. I thought, what better time to rank these albums? So we're going to do that. I got a ton of emails off the last episode, so I'll be getting to your questions. We'll be going over the best riff of 1976. And just a reminder, Spirit Adrift is playing Austin, Texas, May 31st, coming up quick. At Empire with Mean Mistreater and High Desert Queen. Get your tickets at spiritadrift.com. That will be our only North American performance this year. When we get back from Europe, we're going to be working on album number 6. So we're going to disappear again for a little while. But hope to see you May 31st. Okay, let's get into it, man. I've mentioned on this podcast a few times that Cannibal Corpse is the greatest death metal band in the world, which is true, but only because Death is no longer an active band and Chuck is no longer around. Death is the most important death metal band. I also think they're probably the best. It's kind of hard to determine because a band like Cannibal just has so many more albums. They've been around so much longer than what Death was around. But I feel like if Death was still around, we could easily make a case between those two bands. And unfortunately, their output was cut short when Chuck passed away, but we do have these great albums that he gave us while he was around. So, first one, Scream Bloody Gore, in my opinion, the first death metal album ever. It completely set the vibe and the template and the sound and the aesthetic for death metal that's still being used and expanded upon today, almost 40 years later. Pretty straightforward stuff, pretty raw, pretty rough around the edges, gnarly production. This is their most straightforward death metal album, for sure. Many songs inspired by Lucio Fulci movies and Evil Dead and Blood and Guts and Gore and stuff like that. Straight up death metal, man. People talk about Possessed Seven Churches, but I feel like that record is just kind of a Slayer sounding record with slightly gnarlier vocals. This to me is the first death metal album ever. I love it. It sort of hints at where Death would go. But yeah, it's definitely the rawest, most straightforward. But I do love it. I think it has really, really good songs. I think it has an immediacy that they couldn't help but sacrifice on later albums as they got more progressive and more ambitious. You can't really have both. And this one is pure, immediate, in your face death metal. Considering that and the context in which it came out, I have no choice but to put this in S tier. Not just for how influential and groundbreaking it was, but also it just rips. It just sounds badass. It's really cool songs, really in your face, straightforward. Just taking extreme metal to the next extreme, S tier, Scream Bloody Gore. Next up is Leprosy. Seems like this is the favorite of most straight up, death metal purists. Either the first one or this one. I can't get over the snare, man. Like, I'm okay with like weird and quirky and raw production. there's a few different versions of this where they like, I don't know, resampled the snare or remixed the snare. I've never heard a version of it where the snare didn't bother me. So it's kind of hard to overlook that. The songs are good. Obviously, it has some classics. Pull the Plug is like their hit, But I don't know. I don't like this one as much as Scream Bloody Gore, and I definitely don't like it as much as the next one. So this might be wildly unpopular and might make me look like a death metal poser, but I'm going to put this, God, as classic and influential and great as it would be without that snare, I'm going to have to put it in B tier. Sorry, guys. Leprosy's B tier. Spiritual Healing, 1990. This is where things really start sort of transforming for this band. This is the first album I ever heard by Death. I think it might be the first death metal album I ever heard. And I tend to think like, oh, this one's my favorite because of nostalgia or this or that, or, the stuff you discover when you're 13, 14 is your favorite stuff for the rest of your life. But you know what? I listened to the entire catalog with as objective a mind as I can possibly have. And to me, this is like the perfect middle ground between the early, pure, raw death metal, brutal, in your face kind of stuff and what Death would become with the more progressive, ambitious, dorkier shit, right? Not in a bad way, but just smarter and more ambitious. To me, this is like the perfect blend of the original Death sound and the later Death sound. I love his vocals on this. They're real, like, there's like a punk rock element to it almost. The production is really cool and weird. There's a lot of crazy delay and phaser and flanger and just really memorable riffs and songs. Ambitious, but without sacrificing the hooks and the brutality. I have to put Spiritual Healing in S tier. This is my favorite Death album. I thought that Symbolic was like tied with this one for my favorite, but we'll get to that. I just really gave that one a more in-depth listen, and nothing comes close to Spiritual Healing for me personally. S tier. Might also be controversial. Okay, this one, Human. I know that this is groundbreaking. I know that this like changed the whole game for better or worse. I respect how ingenious the whole thing is. I respect how gifted the players are. I respect everything about it. Do I like it as much as most people seem to like it? Not really. Not really. I feel like they're feeling out something on this album that they ended up nailing on the next few albums. But on this one, it just feels to me like they're still figuring it out. I know that sounds insane. And again, I understand how important this album is for the progression of extreme metal and all that. And I'm really not trying to be contrarian. But when I listen to it, things don't grab me as much as the previous albums or the later albums. There's just there's not as much to hang on to as a listener. You know what I mean? As a musician and a songwriter and somebody who appreciates like pushing the boundaries of your own playing and pushing the boundaries of the genre you're in, I love it. I respect it. But as a listener, as a fan, it just doesn't grab me as much as the other ones. Therefore, oh God, I'm going to have to put Human in B tier, if you can believe that. Sorry, everyone. Okay, that being said, Human was important not just for metal and extreme metal, but for Death figuring out what they're doing. I don't know. That's just how I feel. So the next one, Individual Thought Patterns. To me, everything that they were feeling out on Human is there, but better on this one. They have Andy LaRogue from King Diamond on lead guitar, which is just like insane. This has more substance or more. I don't want to say hooks. I don't want to say catchy aspects, but the songs are just a little more like songs instead of clinics on how to be a really, really good musician. The musicianship is still there. It's still like mind-boggling and insane, but the songs are just a little more. Mike from Opeth, I watched a little thing of him talking about some of the earlier Opeth albums, and he kept using the word patchy to describe his own stuff as being maybe not as cohesive as he would want it to be from a songwriting perspective. And I think that's what it is about Human. It feels a little patchy to me. This one, all the strengths of Human, all the impressive elements of the Human album, but less patchy. So I'm going to put Individual Thought Patterns in A tier. Only thing keeping it from S tier is it is just a little. I'm a song guy, even if I'm listening to weird, extreme, ambitious music. And I feel like the next album improves even more in that department. It's like this trajectory that they started with Human keeps getting a little bit better. Symbolic. This seems to be a super popular one today. I don't think it did that great at the time. I'm not for sure. I know it was like a one album thing with Roadrunner, and Chuck was not super happy with how things panned out. Metal was kind of weird at the time. When did this come out? 95. Yeah. Things were a little weird. Like new metal was rearing its head. And from what I understand, Chuck felt like he just didn't get this album did not get the support that it deserved, maybe because the focus was on, inferior forms of metal that were emerging. I thought that this was tied with Spiritual Healing for my favorite, but when I got this reissue that just came out, I listened to it a couple times, and there are some moments where it seems a little, I don't want to say aimless, or repetitive. But there's just a few parts where it's like, okay, what's going on here? It almost seems like a transitional thing that goes on a little too long. I did say that this one improved upon Individual Thought Patterns, which I think it does, but it is a little patchier in a weird way. Like the high points of this album, I think, are the highest points of Death's entire musical output. But there's not really low points, but just kind of like coasting, like cruise control stuff where you're kind of like, all right, where's this going? I'm along for the ride, but I hope this is going somewhere, especially with the last track. I feel like you really, really need a strong closing track. Put your weakest song second to last, but don't put it last, And I almost feel like they put on the ambient, epic, clean, dramatic like outro on Perennial Quest to kind of like make up for the fact that it might not be as strong a song as you want in a closing song. So they put that outro on it to really make it like an epic last impression or whatever. But you're not fooling me, guys. A tier, gotta put it A tier. Some of the riffs on this are just insane. Chuck is like still doing the super ambitious, smart stuff, but he's bringing back some of the stuff from his youth, like the Iron Maiden love and that sort of thing. And it's a great combination. If the songs were a little more songy, I think it would be S tier, but I got to put it A tier, guys. Sorry. I was surprised by some of my own reactions upon revisiting the Death discography in preparation for this episode, because I thought that I had a certain ranking for each album, and I was wrong. And this is another one that sort of surprised me. Sound of Perseverance, I have to put in S tier, which sort of, it shocked me that Symbolic is not in S tier, but this one is. This one's totally different than any of their other albums. but it is so fucking good. It's so good. And upon revisiting it, I think this is one of the first ones I heard, maybe the second Death album I ever heard. And I hadn't listened to it in a while, but upon revisiting it, it seems to me that what they started with Human, they perfected on the last album, which is such a beautiful thing to go out on a high note like that. I kind of feel the same way about Pantera and Reinventing the Steel. I just feel like that's like a high watermark of their whole career. And I feel the same with Death. The playing is absolutely outrageous. Chuck's vocals are like really gnarly, like different sounding than any other album. They're a little bit higher pitched and meaner than the last couple of albums, and the songs are knock your socks off type of arrangements and performances, but they're catchy and really memorable. And I just think it's everything that they were trying to accomplish starting with Human. I think they nailed it with Sound of Perseverance. So I'm going to put the final Death album in S tier with Spiritual Healing and the first one. Let me know where you guys rank these albums in the comments, because it's one of those things that, putting an album in B tier relative to the band that we're discussing, which is Death. Death's B tier is any other band's S tier. I just want to be clear on that. This is all relative to the high quality of the band Death, Death B tier is not the same as Metallica B tier. I'll put it that way. Okay. Yeah. Let me know where you rank these. It's one of those things where it could change every day, but I revisited the whole catalog over the last week or so, and that's where it stands right now. Thanks to everybody that wrote in, by the way, off of that last episode. Got a ton of emails. Makes my job a lot easier here. If you have questions or comments or anything, write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com. Right now, we're going to go over the best riff of 1976. If you're new to this channel, somebody wrote in a while back and was like, hey, you should break down the best riffs of every year, starting with 1970. So I do one every episode. Today we're on 1976. Most of the time I talk about most of the time I talk about multiple riffs on here, but 76, there's a lot of really serious contenders. But for me personally, just in the significance of my own life and human experience, there can only be one in 76. Make sure this sumbitch is working. Okay. I might even overdub some of the harmonies. We'll see. We'll see how that turns out. Cowboy Song, Thin Lizzy. Thin Lizzy put out 2 albums in 1976. And I know Rainbow Rising came out in 76, and it's got Stargazer. And we can say, how can Cowboy Song be better than Stargazer? Which you'd be right. Somebody wrote in talking about, Sad Wings of Destiny. But nothing touches the Cowboy Song for me personally. I just have so many memories of driving around as a kid, blasting that. And it's super simple, nothing crazy impressive, but try to write something like that. It's a lot harder than writing something complicated. Write something that people hear and remember for the rest of their lives and walk around randomly catching themselves humming it in their head. That's also, to me, like the perfect, absolute pinnacle example of the Thin Lizzy harmony, which is my favorite kind of guitar harmony. And man, it doesn't get much better than that. I love the Cowboy Song. That's it for me. Cowboy Song, 1976. Said I was only going to talk about one, but Stargazer by Rainbow, whatever. That's probably the objective answer, but Cowboy Song is my personal favorite by far. All right. Getting to emails from last week. Marcus, just listened to the latest episode and thought I'd hit you with a few questions. Naturally, you're my top pick for hosting a revamped Headbangers Ball, but I also agree with your choice of Colin Young. Hard Lore rules. It's the only music podcast I follow as regularly as I do yours. Y'all should do a crossover episode sometime, maybe for an album/band draft. Yeah, thanks, man. I like that show too. They do a really good job. I've been supposed to go on there a couple times. I know when the Neon Nightmare record came out, my publicist was trying to hook it up. But I don't know. Maybe they're prejudiced against me because I'm all natty, bro. No, just kidding. I'm kidding. No shade. Speaking of which, this is Marcus again. Their hardest hardcore band draft was extremely entertaining. Had me wondering who you would rate as the hardest bands outside of hardcore. Obviously, you've got non-rock icons like Biggie and David Allan Coe who went just as hard in life as they did in their music. But who comes to mind in rock and metal? Can't wait to hear some new Spirit Adrift when it's ready. I wish I lived closer to Austin so I could catch the gig. Fingers crossed you come to the Twin Cities sometimes in the not too distant future. You probably know it already, but Turf Club is a great venue that's outside the Live Nation umbrella. Keep riffing, dude. Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I like Minneapolis a lot. Twin City, all right? That's Minneapolis, St. Paul. Got friends up there. Always had a good time up there. Yeah, when we finish the next album, we're going to seriously, I've never intelligently approached an album release ever. So we're going to do like a real album cycle. That's the plan, at least. So we should be up there next year. Hardest bands. I glanced at the Hard Lore thing where they were talking about hardest hardcore bands. And I think they were saying we can't factor in like the guy's hardness outside of the music too much. But I think what you're asking is like, who were the most rough and tumble, like tough guy, hardest dudes off stage? And the bands that come to mind, we could limit this strictly to Outlaw Country and all those guys. I mean, they were like shooting each other. Read George Jones' autobiography. Watch the first season of Tales from the Tour Bus. And any one of those guys, it's like them, all of them by far. But if we're talking about like rock and metal, first band that comes to mind is Sabbath. I've read everybody's biography that's, connected to Black Sabbath in any way. Tony Iommi was putting people through fucking walls. Like there's a classic story about some review that this guy wrote that was like really needlessly like personally vindictive against Tony and kind of like, going into personal details about Tony's life that maybe the public shouldn't be privy to and really using that against him. I guess the guy interviewed him and he kind of faked like everything was all cool. And then when the article came out, they were like, what the fuck? And Tony invited him years later to a show and the guy showed up and Tony, I don't know. There's like many different accounts of it. And I guess he was like, hey, how's it going? And the guy came up to shake his hand and he put him literally through the fucking wall. And the guy was like running down the street and shit. There were stories about in the early Sabbath days, like Ozzy or Bill like scamming on some chick and it turns out she has a boyfriend and then like 5 guys are about to beat him up and Tony comes in and just like wipes them all out. He was a trained boxer, I guess. There's a story. It's been a long time since I've read any of those guys' books, but they all, what do you call it? Correlate or whatever. They all back each other's accounts up that there was like some giant brawl in like a restaurant or a hotel that went down over like 3 different stories of the hotel and people were getting thrown off of balconies and hit with hammers and shit. They would beat up skinheads. It just seemed like, I mean, even before they were a band, they came up in Birmingham and people were just putting each other through plate glass window at the pub and that sort of thing. So Sabbath definitely first one that comes to mind. Thin Lizzy comes to mind. It's the only instance I can think of where a member of the band, Brian Robertson, was basically not able to play on an album and I guess not able to show up for the photo shoot that would end up being the cover of the album because he had shattered his hand on somebody's head in a bar fight. So if you look at Bad Reputation, there's 3 people on that album art. And yeah, I guess the reason why is that Robbo was in the hospital or something, or just like MIA because he had shattered his hand on somebody's head. And they, sources close to the band say that Phil Lynott had like a hollow leg, like he could just outdrink and outfight and out everything, everybody. So Thin Lizzy comes to mind for sure. Yeah, if for no other reason, just what other band was somebody not able to play on the record because they broke their hand on somebody's face? Who else? Lynyrd Skynyrd. I'll keep it to 3. But same thing. You hear stories about Lynyrd Skynyrd. I mean, they just the band started in Jacksonville, and that's a big Navy town. And all the dudes in the band had long hair and would play the bars in Jacksonville. And the girls would like them, and the sailors would not like them, and they would have to fight their way, out of these out of these Navy bars every time they played. So yeah, I'll keep it to those. Like I said, if we were going to go into like drill rap and shit like that, or outlaw country, I think like hardcore rap and old school outlaw country, both of those are like a different level. But if we're talking about rock and metal, those are the 3 that stick out to me. It's funny too, because so many metal bands that you think are tough, that's like their aesthetic. It's literally just an aesthetic. But then you see a band like The Band that look like a bunch of whatever dads or something, but you start reading those guys' autobiographies and you're like, holy shit. Something about those 70s bands, they were just insane, all of them. Lee. Hey, Nate, Lee here. I noticed on your last video, you were talking about bands being held back by the industry and TikTok things. My father recently passed, and sorry to hear that, man. I started a band up with gear being so expensive and sometimes feeling discouraged at times. Aside from your profession, do you believe it's worth trying to commit to a band with all these things going on today? And secondly, I love the tone so much, especially how the leads and harmonies are so melodic. I'm playing stoner rock and use a Proco Rat. Hell yeah, love it. And a 35 Crush RT. What would be your setup to get that style of tone with my EQ and Rat pedal pairing? Sorry for the long-winded question, but I would really appreciate to learn some tips. Thank you for everything you're doing for the metal scene. Sorry to hear about your dad, Lee. That's not easy, man. Yeah, so it's easy to be like, no, it's not worth it to start a band. But like every decade or every year that somebody's tried to start a band, there's a million reasons not to, even in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when people were making a shitload of money, relative to today. I'm sure that there were a million reasons from their parents or their friends or whoever, like why they shouldn't have started a band. I'm sure that Black Sabbath, there were a million reasons why they shouldn't start a band. Lynyrd Skynyrd, Metallica, anybody. And I think regardless of what's going on in the world, there will be a million reasons not to do something risky or different, But the evergreen answer is this. If you want to be in a band just because that's what you love doing, then there's no reason not to do it. It doesn't matter that illegal downloading is a thing. It doesn't matter that streaming services don't pay anybody shit. It doesn't matter that Live Nation just like got a stranglehold on the live front. It doesn't matter if the economy's bad. It doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter what kind of music is popular. None of that shit matters at all. If you want to play music and you love doing it, then fucking do it and fuck everybody and fuck everything. Like that's the attitude that you have to have. You can't even think of it like, is this a good idea? Is it worth it? Like, nobody that ever started a kick-ass band thought about it that way. That's just, you have to do it because you love it, and that's it. And then if that's the reason why you're doing it, then you're fucking invincible. You know, I got caught up at one point with like, oh, you know, the ambition thing, the drive thing. It's good to have, but you have to be able to separate it. You know, I got caught up in like, oh, I want to do this. I need to do this. And then I quit music, and then I started Spirit Adrift and joined Gatecreeper, and I got caught right back up in that shit. Oh, I need to do this. And it's a fucking dead end street, man. I think back to this interview with Kenny Hickey I was watching, where he was kind of expressing some guilt for the fact that Typo Negative and their management kind of pushed Peter to be a full-time touring guy, quote unquote rock star or whatever, when maybe that's not exactly what he wanted. And Kenny was talking about the endless carrot. There's a carrot being dangled on a stick in front of you, and you chase it, and you chase it forever. And if you think you're going to catch it, you don't. If you think there's ever going to be a finish line, there's not. You just have to determine in yourself every day what it is that you want to do that day. And if you want to play music, fucking play music, write some songs. Proco Rat is a great pedal. I love it. Trevor from Obituary uses that thing. And I know, you know, he plays a Fender Strat with a humbucker, and he turns his tone knob all the way off, from what I understand. And so that's the Obituary tone. For Doom, don't scoop your mids, man, ever. People want to scoop mids for what it sounds like you're trying to do. Yeah, rock those mids, dude. If anything, scoop the treble, maybe. It just depends. Like if you want to sound like Weed Eater sounds like two bass guitars, pretty much. You know, I don't know for sure that Shep turns his tone knob all the way down. It kind of sounds like he does, but it sounds like the bass on the amps all the way up, and maybe the mids too, and the trebles all the way down, something like that. You know, Jimmy's tone and I Hate God, I think I'm pretty sure he turns his tone knob all the way off. Turns the treble all the way off on the amp, puts the bass all the way up, and the mids like almost all the way up. I would have to revisit his little rig rundown thing, but it just depends, man. I'm a big mids guy. I don't know what kind of music specifically you're trying to make, but the mids are the secret. There's a bite there, especially if you're playing with another guitar player, full band. What sounds good playing by yourself isn't necessarily what's going to sound good with a full band with two guitars and a bass or whatever it is you're doing. So dial it in with your other guys. But I like mids, man. Turn up the mids on that Rat pedal, and you'll be able to really hear a lot of bite and definition. Hope that helps. Paul, hey Nate, loving the show. Just watched Headbangers Ball episode. I went to a lot of the Monsters of Rock festivals in the 80s and 90s. Amazing times. What are your opinions on the UK 82 bands like Discharge, GBH, and The Exploited? All big influences on the early thrash scene. I was just listening to Discharge, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. I was doing a plank. I'm trying to... I saw a thing on social media about the cast of the Barbie movie doing planks and what their times were. And Margot Robbie crushed everybody, including Ryan Gosling. And I was like, I wonder where my plank is now. And I'm thinking, what's the thing that's going to distract my mind the most in the shortest amount of time? And so I put on Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. Yeah, I love that record. I love Discharge. I guess they're still playing. I don't know who all it is. GBH and Exploited, I think was the other one you mentioned. I haven't delved into their stuff as much, but I like it. I like all that stuff. But yeah, Discharge, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing is killer. Great album. And I won't give away my plank time, but it was about 7 Discharge songs. Humble brag, dude. All natty, baby. All natty. No shade. Jonathan, I'd be interested in hearing your opinions on 2 big metal bands that I haven't really heard you talk about, Tool and Gojira. How do you feel about those bands? What do you like and dislike? Have you heard the latest Messa album? Yeah, Messa from Italy. A lot of people have been asking me about that. I haven't heard the whole album yet. I heard 2 singles. I liked them. I really liked the first song from the last album, the one before this new one. And I thought I was really going to be into the album, but it's so hard. It's not anybody's fault. It's hard to keep my attention for a full album length. There are very few albums where I think every song and every moment is engaging and exciting or whatever. Even some of my favorite albums. And maybe that's why, you know, Spirit Adrift albums have a lot of different kinds of songs on them, because I feel like that's important. If you're going to invest 45 minutes or an hour into something, and it, you know, there's exceptions, like AC/DC songs all kind of sound somewhat similar. But if you're going to do that, every song needs to be like really, really, really good, you know, like Rain and Blood. All those songs are kind of similar. They do play with the tempos and stuff like that, but every song is just really fucking good. Like there's no fat on it at all. It's engaging the whole time. So I don't know. A lot of people have been asking me about Messa. Yeah, I need to check out that full album. What was the other question? Oh, Tool and Gojira. Yeah, I respect them both a lot. I liked Tool when I was younger, discovering heavy music and stuff like that. I feel like Undertow and Anima, however you say it, those are great albums. There's other stuff that I like that they've done. The last album, dude, exactly what I'm talking about. I put it on a flight to Europe or something. And the thing was so like monotonous to me that my brain forgot it was listening to music. It like I wasn't even doing anything else. I wasn't even sleeping. I wasn't watching a movie or reading or anything. I was just sitting there listening to the Tool album. And it was so like whatever that it was like there was silence for a long time. And then I snapped back and I was like, oh shit, I'm like, what happened over the last 30 minutes of this album? Like nothing even like registered in my mind. So I don't know, bands like that reach a point where it's like, where's the motivation? You know what I mean? Like, and it's nothing against them. I can't imagine how hard it would be to be motivated when you're like, oh, I got my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Always wanted to do that. Oh, I have my own, you know, wine company and vineyard. Always wanted to do that. Like, where do you get the motivation to like, and maybe it's not Maynard's fault. I'm not blaming him in particular. Yeah, you know, there's an old quote in like boxing and martial arts that it's hard to get up and run in the morning when you're sleeping in silk sheets. You know what I mean? It's like the Conor McGregor effect. It's once you accomplish everything you ever dreamed of and you're, you know, wealthy and secure and stable, how do you continue to make like really out there, meaningful, slightly pissed off, aggressive art, you know? But I do like the early Tool stuff. It's kind of like a running joke that their fans are like the most annoying people on earth. And, you know, that kind of kept me from fully becoming a Tool fan, to be honest. But yeah, I respect everything they've done. Never seen them live. I want to see them live real bad. I hear it's like a life-changing experience. But I do like Undertow and Anima. Those are great albums. Gojira, respect them, just never really got into them. That kind of music I'm very particular with. I think they're the best at whatever that is, for sure. I wouldn't compare them to Meshuggah, but to me, they're close enough in the same orbit because I'm just not that much, I don't have that much interest in that kind of music. But to me, those two bands are like the best at whatever that is. I know Gojira is not a gent band, but they sort of maybe inspired all the gent bands or something, and Meshuggah definitely did. I think the last time I listened to a full Gojira album, I was in high school, whichever one with the whale on it, maybe. You know what though? The one they put out with the cover of like the statue looking guy, almost like a samurai looking dude or something. What was that called? Fortitude or something like that. The stuff I heard from that, I did really like, actually. I like the more melodic, shouting vocals, but shouting notes, you know? But yeah, again, it's like, those are Two bands I respect a lot, but I don't ever really listen to. Uh, Hope that answers your question. David, if you could choose to have been born in a particular time and place in history, what would it be? For me, it would be London in maybe 1960. Being able to see the original lineup of Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Queen, Judas Priest, and Pink Floyd in small venues at the top of their creativity would have been awesome. Then you could witness the new wave of British heavy metal and further evolution of thrash, death, black, doom metal. As a young adult, even pop music was great back then. True, it was music. I hope this message finds you well. Looking forward to seeing Spirit Adrift in Europe soon. A tour with Night and Bewitcher, for example, would be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah, we're talking tonight about touring. I think we have the same agent. Don't quote me on that, but that would be great. There's no reason to not make that happen. Yeah, I mean, I had Born Too Late tattooed across my chest as a nod to St. Vitus, who are one of my favorite bands, but also just that's how I've always felt. Always. The first time I saw the video for Paranoid, I was like, that's where I'm supposed to be. You know, that's what it always felt like. Why am I not in 1970, man? I would have liked to see like Hank Sr. coming up. I forget what year he died. Let me look that up. I'm going to pull it up. I'm doing research, guys. Hang on just a second. Hank Williams. Can't spell. 53. So yeah, but then I would have been pretty damn old. Okay, so let's say born in 1940 and see Hank Williams when I'm 11, 12, right? And then 60s come around, I'm in my 20s. Get to see all the 60s bands, get to see the Byrds, Rolling Stones, all the 60s country and shit too. Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, get to see George Jones coming up. All the psychedelic stuff that was going on the West Coast. Get to see metal come around in the 70s and punk. What am I? I'm in my 30s in the 70s. Okay. I'm in my late 30s now and I'm still interested in new music and stuff, so that works. I think once you're in your 30s and the 70s and you're discovering like Black Sabbath and shit like that, then you're probably in for life, right? So then I'm in my 40s in the 80s when metal's getting more and more extreme. I'm in my 50s in the 90s when grunge and all that kind of stuff is coming. Yeah, I'm going to say 1940, somewhere in the States, but I'm also able to travel, you know. But even being in the States, like Sabbath and Zeppelin and all those guys were touring the States too. So I think that would be it for me. If I could see Hank Williams Sr. when I was like 12, yeah, that would be sick. That would be like the perfect, absolute perfect thing. But I like your answer too. Either way, not 1988, the year that I was actually born. All right. What all is going on, man? Yeah, come see Spirit Adrift Saturday, May 31st at Empire with two of the best Texas bands that there are, Mean Mistreater and High Desert Queen. Pushing the fuck out of it. Forgive me for my shameless self-promotion. But it is our only North American show of this year. It's so funny. We'll play shows somewhere, and then somebody's like, when are you guys going to play so-and-so Wisconsin? And it's like, we were there 2 days ago. So part of the reason I'm pushing it so hard is I don't know how to inform people anymore about what's going on. So I just mention it every episode. What else? Write me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com. Makes it a lot easier when you guys are sending in these thought-provoking questions and ideas. Sorry if I didn't get to your question. There were a lot of them this week. What do you think of my death discography ranking? I know that some of it will be unpopular, but that's how I feel. I'm sorry. I feel like Spiritual Healing, it really objectively is their best album. Maybe I'm crazy. Give me ideas what to talk about. bigriffenergy@gmail.com. Subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks to everybody for the support. And I'll see you next week, hopefully. And if not, I will see you May 31st in Austin. Peace.
Riff.